What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to update those Astrobot sales we talked about a few days ago. We got some more info, one actually from Japan, and then also just in UK in general, so kind of expanding the scope of the sales. And look, it's for the same reason I'm making this video as I did last one, just to throw it out there in the beginning. I care about this game. I love it a lot. I want the game to do well. I want us to get sequels, and I also want this to send a message to PlayStation to give us more games of this kind, right? Like, that's honestly, maybe above anything else, that is the main statement I want to kind of lead with, right? Because if this game is going to perform poorly or even just like subpar, there's really no message to PlayStation to keep going with Sly Coopers or bringing it back, right? Jack and Daxter, more Astrobot games. There's really not a reason. The game needs to, I think, show them, okay, there's legitimate interest, all right? Now, as I always say for these videos, just in case I have to, even though we're not talking about like the qualities of Astro, I did get a review code from PlayStation. They gave it to me a day early, so just to kind of throw it out there, even if it's for just legal purposes. But let's talk about the new sales, and we'll start with Christopher Dring that talks about UK in general, right? So originally it was the UK physical. It was that it was doing fine, like not so good, but not terrible. But now it is actually doing pretty good. So he says, to clarify, Astrobot's UK sales are good. This isn't the sort of game that would ever do mega week 1 figures. These games often sell over time. To offer some comparison, Astrobot's week 1 in the UK is bigger than Sonic Frontiers and Crash 4's debut and their multi-platform. Now, the other part to it, and then we'll kind of do like an analysis of it, is that Astrobot was number 2 in Japan physically. So this is the same thing as UK, physical. However, in Japan, they actually give the number. So it sold 12,672 physical units at launch in Japan. And just to start there really fast, I did see people talking about that it almost caught Japan by storm because the pre-order numbers were actually terrible for this game. It wasn't until really the game came out and the reviews came out for this game that suddenly Japanese players, kind of felt the urge to play it. Now, one thing that I've talked about and we've been talking about really because of the PS5 Pro, right? Like, Sony has really made some interesting, and interesting is like a nice word to say the least, choices in Japan, right? They have raised prices. They raised prices of the PS5, and you can actually see it reflected in the sales of PS5. You might look at the Japan sales for games, for consoles. You might say, like, well, what's going on over there? And the answer is, well, they're kind of being attacked by corporate. Like, they're being charged more money. It's tougher for them to buy a game than, say, in the US, they actually have to pay more money, even with like the conversion rate and all that stuff. So, that stuff might have something to do with it. But I did see people saying that what's going to probably happen is the restocks are going to be really quick to get Astrobot like back on store shelves, and we'll see how it does week 2. I remember Stellar Blade not doing amazing in Japan at first, but actually had very long legs, and I feel like that game sold like 120, 130,000 physical units in Japan after a few months. So, like, you can do pretty well over there if you're just kind of consistent. So we'll see what Astro looks like kind of from week 1 to week 2, because if it kind of holds the numbers, it might be able to do a good 60, 70, 80,000 physical units. That's not even digital, right? Just physical units, and just in Japan. So I just wanted to kind of throw it out there because they're not amazing physical numbers, but I feel like Stellar Blade was somewhat close. And again, it's really about the legs. Like, will the game have long legs? And then to the UK tweet, I think what's actually most interesting is the second part to it, right? When you compare it to Sonic and Crash 4. Now, people say, well, it actually brings up the Crash discussion again, right? Where it's like, well, Crash didn't really sell. It kind of did, though. It kind of did well over time. It didn't do well initially. We just talked about this because of the kind of the documentary that was done on it, right? But compared to the Insane Trilogy, no, Crash 4 did not do very good. But in its own right, it sold over 5 million units worldwide. It just kind of started slow and did well as time went on. So starting better than that, again, it doesn't give us like good metrics. We don't actually know what Crash did in week 1, like literal numbers, but Crash 4 ended up doing well. well, and it's a platformer, and it's got kind of that legacy. The legacy part maybe Astro doesn't have, but it is similar. And then Sonic actually did do pretty well. Like, kind of at the start it did well, long term it did well. Like, these are, I like these comparisons because, yeah, like the genre is closer and like the similarities are there, but also like you're talking about some games that did pretty okay. Again, like Crash kind of started slow, but if Astro can beat those, or even if it can kind of stay, and now again, it's just in the UK and it's just physical, right? So you have to kind of keep all that stuff in mind. But if Astro can do like a Crash 4 type thing, that's 5 million units. I feel like that's really good. And again, I don't want to retread on things I've said 1,000 times or even just in like the last video, but I feel like for Astro, you want to push that 5 million. I feel like if it does 1, 2, 3, it would make its money back. You know what I mean? Asobi wouldn't be shut down. You know what I mean? They wouldn't go after them. But that message part, right? Like there's kind of two parts to it, right? One is don't go after them. Let them keep making games that they want to make. That's very important because they're a very talented team. Part two is like, okay, well, if you do above and beyond, maybe you can kind of send a message to do more of these type of games, not just with Asobi, but with other, just other games in general. So, that's kind of the difference to me. If it can do Crash 4 lifetime, 5, 6 million, like that would be, I would say that would be pretty good. Now, I'm not an economist. I'm not, at Sony headquarters, like taking stock and, I don't know what they want the game to do, right? And how fast they want the game to do it. That's an important thing as well. If they're expecting this game to do 5, 6 million the first couple months, like God of War or Spider-Man or Horizon, like that's not going to happen. These type of games don't do that. They have long legs. They do it well over time, right? So that's what you just kind of have to be prepared for. So I'm glad, they came out to give us these numbers, and we'll keep you guys updated, on the channel here. Eventually we'll know how well it did digitally. Eventually we'll know how well it did in the US as well. So when those kind of things come out, I'll make videos on that as well. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.